During lockdown, I received cocktails from some of the world's best bars delivered right to my door. Who should cycle them over to me at a moment's notice? None other than the drinks legend, who is my guest today. I'm Susan Schwartz, your drinking companion, and this is Lush Life Podcast. Every week, we are inspired to live life one cocktail at a time. Many of you who filled out my Lush Life survey asked for more interviews with industry legends. Well, here you go. Fabrice Limon is at your service. He has too many titles to list here, and most of them are managing partner and co-founder. Scotch+Limon, Highball Brands, The Drinks Drop, just to name a few. How did it happen that he was delivering those cocktails to me? Well, you'll have to listen to the episode, won't you? For those of you who haven't completed my Lush Life survey, head over to a lushlifemanual.com/survey-2022 and please fill it out. But wait until after this app. Now, let's join Fabrice. When I first started podcasting, I would say, okay, we're going to start from the beginning. And I kind of want to know that with you. So just to start off, why don't you tell me where you grew up and a little bit about your upbringing?
So, yes, I'm the most common type of person, which is a French Yorkshireman. I was raised in Sheffield from about 3 years old. My parents are both French. I moved over my father's from Brittany, my mom's from Calais. They met when they were working in a hotel. My mom was a receptionist. My dad was working in the restaurant. My dad spent a long time trying to woo my mum. She was playing. She didn't make it easy for him. But apparently his nice knitwear won the day. So they were working together. It was in Brittany, and decided to move to England. This was in the mid-60s. They were very young. They just got married, 22 years old, something like that, and decided to move to England, which was, quite a big thing in the 60s to decide, we're going to move over there. We want to experience a new culture. We want to learn the language. We want to see what's there for us. Their families were like, why are you going to England? France is amazing, blah, blah.
I'm thinking the same thing myself. Like, who would do that? It's the opposite. You hear Brits moving.
Yeah. And I'm seeing here in France. But yeah, they moved to England but it's just because they wanted adventure, and that stayed with them all their lives. So they moved to England in the mid-60s, originally to Bolton, where they worked again in a restaurant together. My mum was on reception, my dad was in the restaurant as a waiter. They stayed in Bolton for a while. They had my two eldest sisters, Sophie and Nathalie, then decided to move back to France towards Calais, which is where my mum's from. So they stayed up there, and they stayed around 18 months and then thought, you know what? I think there's more for us in the UK. And from a hospitality standpoint, I think they felt there was a bigger opportunity for them. I think they felt with, coming from France, there was there was something quite exotic about it. About them, they saw an opportunity to do more in the UK than maybe in France. So they came back, and they had Canny, who we'll probably speak a bit more about, my other sister, all three of them older than me. And then me, the baby boy, turned up 9 years after my eldest sister. So, the favorite son. So, kind of raised
in... Of course.
Of course, yeah. Raised in hospitality. I moved to Sheffield when I was 3. So, so that's kind of that. I don't really remember Barrow at all, but we were raised in a hotel restaurant. Then the cellar was converted into a French wine bar called Michel's Bar, Michel being my dad. And my first job...
I love it.
My first job was in Michel's Bar. I didn't have a paper round. To earn my pocket money, I used to clean the cellar, and I used to restock the bar fridges on a Saturday morning and clean the glass wash machine. So that's how I used to earn my pocket money. And I did that from probably too young until I was about 15. Then I got my national insurance number when I was 15. And my parents said, that's time for you to go upstairs to the restaurant, get a waistcoat, get a bow tie, and you need to start that silver service. So, 15, I started silver service waiting in the restaurant.
So were your parents the kind of French parents who would give you a little wine with water? Or did you have that introduction to wine really early?
I do remember there being booze at all because we'd be back in France growing up. I mean, my dad's from a big family. He's got 6 brothers and 4 sisters. So I have a lot of uncles, aunties, cousins. And summertime was back in France. I'd be spending weeks with, I'd just basically farmed off and spend the summer holidays with one of my cousins, which was great. It's fantastic. But yeah, there was always wine around a little bit. You know, my mum and dad they were quite open with that. We had a different relationship with alcohol, I guess, when I was younger. But yeah, there was always a little bit of wine at the table. We were allowed to drink that, not from too young an age, but there was a little bit of wine and water.
So were you excited to go upstairs and put on that bow tie and start silver service? Or were you like, oh God,
I was terrified. So we've met a few times. And believe it or not, I was the shyest person ever as a child. I mean, painfully shy to the point where I would be rude to people because I'd rather be rude to them so I don't have to speak to them than have to speak to strangers. I couldn't bear speaking to anyone I didn't know. My confidence was bad. I couldn't speak to strangers. I didn't want to deal, very painfully shy as a kid. And I think that was part of the reason my mum particularly wanted me to go upstairs to the restaurant, because she knew it would do me wonders in you know, building my confidence. And it absolutely was 100% the best thing I did was to get up there. I still remember the first day I worked in the restaurant. It was table 8. It was a table of 3. And the first thing I had to do, Ruth, who was the restaurant manager, says, okay, you know, because there was someone following me and telling me what to do. And I had to go and clear the starters from this table. That's simple. Just take the starter plates away and take them into the kitchens. You know, I mean, it's baby steps, right? It's not hard. And I refused to do it. I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going over to that table. I don't want to speak to them. I said, well, this is what you've got to do now. I mean, I remember the table number. I remember how many people were there. And I remember what course I was clearing. It's ingrained on me. It's still such a vivid memory. But I mean, that from there, it kind of bit by bit, it got better and better. I mean, it's fantastic. I loved it. That's when I was bitten by the hospitality bug. I mean, although I was raised around it and, you know, spent a lot of time in the kitchens, I used to love spending time with the chefs. So, you know, I was always curious about food and flavor from a very young age. My mum actually said out of the four kids, I was the one, even at home, that would always be in the kitchen, always pull up a chair, and was always the one asking my mum about food and stuff. The most out of the 4 of us. So I've clearly always had something, you know, in me about food and flavor and just that kind of, you know, creative side.
So did you think that you wanted to be a chef, or did you know what you want, or have a restaurant? Or
no, I was going to be a furniture designer. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said you always wanted to be in hospitality.
Well, clearly there was something that was in there, but I just didn't realize, you know, it was hiding. And by bit, you know, from that, when I started to enjoy the restaurant, you know, 15, 16, 17, I wasn't the most academic at school. I struggled with focus and concentration. I could get the grades, but I couldn't really spend the time probably on doing what needed to be done to get them. Originally, when I was younger, I wanted to be an architect and an interior designer. Then when I spent time at art college, I was like, no, I'm going to be a furniture designer. But at this time, I was getting older, 17. And then I went to work. When I turned 18, I stopped working for my parents and I went to work at a bar in town in Sheffield City, which was kind of like quite a cool bar. And that was when it changed for me. My first bar job was like, this is amazing.
That was when you were at school for furniture design?
At art college, yeah. I was doing general art and design. The plan was to then move on to university to focus on product and furniture design. I deferred going to university. I never went.
When you went to work for the bar, were you just like bar back? What were you doing?
I started as a bartender and on the floor a little bit. And then I moved. They wanted me to then become bar supervisor within about 3 months of being there, probably because I don't know. I mean, I'd been surrounded by hospitality all my life, and then I'd been working in it from 15. And so I probably had quite a bit of experience, even though I was quite young. And then I became the bar supervisor there and stayed there for a couple of years. Then I moved to Oxford and I worked at a place called the Lemon Tree in Oxford.
What was it about your first foray into bars that you thought, oh, yeah, this is it. I forget the furniture design?
Well, I'd gone from being a painfully shy person to being a really sociable person through those years. But when I started working in this city centre bar, it was really lively. It was full of really cool people, and you know, starting to feel as though there was something really energetic and feeding off that and being around people. That's what I wanted. I realized that's what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed finishing of an evening and just sitting back and go, wow, we gave those people such a good night. And it's an incredible feeling. And that's probably started earlier on, you know. I mean, I remember tables when they compliment on the food or compliment on the service. I even remember, you know, that being like, that was great. They had a really good night. That's because of us. It's because of as a team, you know, so it had an impact. But being around that kind of people more my age and being in that bar environment, I mean, it's still now, it never leaves you, even all these years later. I mean, sometimes I still miss that kind of feeling. There's nothing like it.
Your folks, because they had been in it, did they see it as a viable future for you? And did you see it as a viable future for you as well?
My parents, they just wanted the four of us to be happy. Whatever we decided to go into, they wanted us to be happy. They never really hospitality was never something they wanted to push us down, because it's long days, it's unsociable hours, it's challenging. Now, my parents did it as a couple. They were, they ran the business together. They were able to work. They spent time because they were working together, and they would be able to take time off together, and et cetera, et cetera. So they were able to navigate some of those challenges themselves as a partnership. They're fully aware that if you are the one side going into that's in the hospitality, and the other side isn't, it can be really challenging. And I certainly felt that a bit later on in life and in my kind of career history. But they never really forced us down it. But like I said, they just wanted us to be happy. Sophie and Natalie, my eldest two sisters, they worked in the restaurant as well growing up, as we all did. They went on to other things. Cami also worked. She worked downstairs in Michelle's bar, and then she went off to do music production at university. She's the only other one that went into hospitality. My sister owned a place called the Charles Lamb in London, a pub in Islington, for many years. She was a partner in 69 Colbrook Road as well, and also did a lot of work at Zeta Townhouse for Mark and Michael. She's also has her own vermouth brand out now, or is a partner in a vermouth brand, London Vermouth Company. So she's a partner in that, and she's even managed to get the family name on there as well, which is quite nice. And she's also part of the team behind Intune, which is a CBD soft drink. So in some ways, me and Cami have kind of taken a similar route, in fact, that, we're very passionate about hospitality and have carried on down that route with bars, restaurants, and I've ended up in where Cami is now, and obviously where I am now.
Your sister, Cami, how much older is she than you?
20 months.
Oh, I thought you said there was 9 years difference.
9 years between Sophie's the eldest. 9 years between me and Sophie. 7 years between me and Natalie. Then my mum and dad paused for 5 years, then had Cami, and then had me. So there's kind of like two, then a break, then two.
All right. So the two youngest,
Yeah.
Because there goes I was like, oh, well, she was so much older and you saw her doing that, but forget that.
No.
Forget that line of thinking. All right. So go on. Then you came down south and you went to Oxford.
So I was in Oxford and worked I worked at the Lemon Tree. There's a couple, I think Giles Looker was working there as well when I was there. He was a busboy or something. And Jeevan, who's also Mr. Jeevan now, he does event stuff. He was working there. And so I was there briefly in Oxford. Then somebody called me to come back to Sheffield to open a nightclub, I was 20 years old. And I opened a nightclub in Sheffield for someone. And it was really weird. I was 20 years old and we had an over 21s door policy. So, and that was my first license application. Actually was for a nightclub in Sheffield. That was my first time in court for a nightclub application. And I remember being absolutely terrified. But the only question that I was asked while I was in court when I gave my name and the application was, are you any relation to Michel Limon? I went, yes, I'm his son. And they went, okay, well, we can't see there being a problem with the license. So it was granted.
Hey, fabulous.
And that was fun. So I was back to Sheffield briefly, but realized actually, I don't want to be doing nightclubs. I was missing the bar side of things, and if I wanted to take it seriously, it's got to be London. So I moved to London in 1996, late 96, I think it was. 20 years old.
Yeah, that's pretty early in the bar scene.
It was fun.
If we think of like this cocktail renaissance, revolution, whatever you want to call it, that's pretty early. I think 2003, that kind of time, at least when I left New York, and kind of it started here about then. So 96, when you were thinking, if I want to be serious about this, I've got to go to London. What in your mind was being serious? Well,
doing what I was doing was great. But I think in the back of my mind, it was always like, this is great for now. I'm loving what I'm doing. But it was starting to get to a point. It's like, yeah, I want to do more of this. Am I really going to go to university and do furniture? Probably not now. I've realized this is where I want to be. So if this is where I want to be, let's go down and see what it's all about. So it was that kind of conversation. I was young, but if I was going to university, I needed to go down and have an educate. I need to further my education, and my education was going to be in hospitality. So it had to be London, and it was really exciting. Then, we were having a lot of fun. We were really start paving the way for bartending and where it is now. We were making a lot of things up, but we were challenging ourselves. London was kind of in the 90s was a very different place. It was super exciting. Ben Reed was over at the Met. Alex Cameling was down at Detroit. Yeah, Henry and Dre were kicking around, and it was good fun. It was really good fun. My first place though wasn't in a cool bar. It was in a Dome Cafe, which was on Upper Street, like a French cafe, part of the Café Rouge group. That was my first job in London, and it was £25 for a shift. That's what I was getting paid in London, which was not a lot of money. I really needed a job in London. I didn't have one. I really needed one, and I just needed to get somewhere because I needed to pay rent. I needed to be here, and I'd figure it out. And I was leaving my CV everywhere, but I was just happy to say I just wanted a job. But because I had like bar supervisor, I had like club manager and stuff on there, I think they were I was being dismissed. And I remember leaving my CV at the Dome Cafe on Upper Street and leaving it. And then I went back a couple of hours later and said, look, I know you're looking for a bartender, and my CV might say I've got a bit more experience. I literally just want to be a bartender. That's all I need to do. And they're like, well, we did read it and think, yeah, you're probably not ready. You're going to be bored of this job. And I said, just give me a go. And they did. So that was great. So that was my first job at the Dome in Islington. Then I went on to become assistant manager at the one in Covent Garden and joint licensee of the one in Covent Garden when I was 21. And so then I was in town. That was great. Started to meet more people, starting out all the guys from Duffer and everyone was drinking down the Coach and Horses, and it was all very cool and great. And this is London. Challenging because it was, I had no money, but, I was feeling really good about it. And that's where I met the guys who owned Ricky Tick's in Soho. They opened Ricky Tick's in about 94, 95 maybe. And that was kind of one of the first backstreet Soho kind of cocktail bars. And, very music forward. Chemical Brothers, who were just breaking, they were like the resident DJs on a Saturday. And Paul White did all the artwork and the graphics for Bjork. And it was a really cool bar. Tubbs, who used to do the door at Ricky Tick's, I remember used to stand on a beer crate. So he was on the corner of Bateman Street and Greek Street, and he used to stand on the corner, and Bateman Street was blocked. You could not get down Bateman Street because everyone wanted to be in Ricky Tick's. And he'd stand on a beer crate with his trilby, and he'd just be like, you do you and you. But it was that time where people were queuing to get in Met Bar, people were queuing to get Ricky Tick's, people were queuing to get in these kind of spaces, and they could do what they want. I remember one night he turned down Quentin Tarantino. He's like, I don't like what you're wearing, so you can't come. It was that, but it was like that. It wasn't, the choice wasn't there. There was so much energy. There was so much fun to be had. So that was Ricky Tick's. I didn't work at that one. I opened their new bar called LED, which was in Clerkenwell, just off Exmouth Market, opposite the Quality Chop House. So yeah, and we were open in the daytime, so we had a kind of cafe restaurant upstairs, and then the bar downstairs, and the design was kind of like daytime, nighttime, so it was all red and black downstairs. Again, all really cool graphics and very fun. So I was there opened LED in 97, 98, I think that was. Then down to Brighton, we opened Ricky Tick's in Brighton in 99 in Bond Street, which was fun. Thought it'd be a bit more laid back in Brighton, but my God.
That must have been such a blast.
We had a lot. I mean, it went up a notch in Brighton, and then it was great fun. So that was good. Yeah, I think Ricky Tick's was, that was a fun bar to do, and we had some good times down there. Then I went to France, actually, did a bar in the French Alps in Val d'Isère, did a season out there. That was good. And then came back and moved back to Sheffield. Yorkshire was calling, and opened a bar called Solar in Sheffield. So now we're in the noughties now. It's 2000. That was end of 2000.
Now, all this time, are you bartending? When you say opening a bar, are you bartending? Are you managing the bar? What is it that's driving you on? What are you learning, and what is keeping you in? Is it just the fun of it, or how did you feel that your career was progressing?
So I was assistant manager at Dome. Then when we opened LED in Clerkenwell, I was assistant manager there, and then Ricky Tick's, I was the GM. So by this point, I'm 23, 24. And, these were so young, really young, probably too young. But, I'm I was fortunate to have, the experience I had from a young age, not just, being in the restaurant from 15, but I think being around it and working downstairs in Michelle's bar at a young age and being around that environment and watching, and every day I'd be in the bar, I'd be in the restaurant and just watching it, being immersed in it. So I was fortunate that things would have probably came quite naturally to me. And same for Cami as well. She said the same. What feels natural to us because we were immersed in it, and we've watched other people work. It's like, why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? And we forget that it's just, for us, it was normal. I remember my dad moaning about him when we could smoke inside. When my dad would be up at 6 a.m, he'd walk around, he'd be picking litter in the car park. If there's ever any more than 3 cigarettes in an ashtray, you just wouldn't do it. You never leave, if you never walk past a table empty-handed, you never walk to and from somewhere without nothing in your hands. It's all of these little things that, you kind of pick up when you're young. It never leaves you. And little tips of, how to communicate with customers and never lose eye contact and all of these things. And, some guys that I trained in the 90s that went on to some fantastic things and opened some great bars. And, some of the things that I said to them in the 90s when they were starting out as bartenders, they said that they never forgot. So by the time I was 23, 24, I'd got quite a lot of experience. And I think the driving force was to stay in it, was to keep on learning more, was to keep on. I think being immersed in the industry was about wanting to give something back to people. There was something about creating a space that gives memories. And I think that's what was driving me. I wanted to do more there was something quite addictive about the bars and the environment and seeing people leave with having such happy memories. And that's what I wanted to do more of. I wanted to do more of that. And being fortunate enough to open these venues and be involved in that from a young age was really exciting, from opening a nightclub at 20 years old to then LED to Ricky Tix, it was super exciting and to be fortunate to have done all of that. So, the next progression was obviously to open my own place after doing all of that stuff. And that was kind of the next step at 25 years old. I opened my first bar with a little bit of cash.
And was that the one in Sheffield?
Yeah, Lions. I opened, not Solar. Solar, I opened, again, another opening that I did from scratch. That was when old Theme magazine was still doing, we were up for best drinks menu, best bar team, best new bar, all of this kind of things. And people like, Sheffield? How can Sheffield be up for all of these awards? It was one of those where I pulled a lot of favors in. It was early 2000s and from my friends down in London and, Diesel, which was obviously still a cool brand back then. And Diesel, I managed to get them to sponsor all the staff uniforms. So all the guys were in, we had all our own, Diesel jeans and Diesel shirts, and the guys on the door were in Diesel puffers. And, it was pretty cool for anywhere, but for it to be in Sheffield, and the building was super cool. Tim, who I opened the bar for, he was one of the partners. He's still a very, very good friend of mine. He's my son's godfather. He did such an incredible job on the interior. It was just a really cool cutting edge bar in Sheffield. But yeah, from there, the next plan was, it was going to have to be my own place. And that was a place called Lion's Lair. I bought an old pub in Sheffield city centre, which was called the Yorkshire Grey, the Yorkshireman's Arms. And it was an old rockers pub. It was owned by the guitarist from Def Leppard, who were also from Sheffield. And so I bought this old pub in the town centre. I was going to do like a quite a foodie, a gastro pub, which was, where are we now? 2002, 2003. It was starting to become a thing in London. It hadn't really become a thing outside of London. A lot of the people in Sheffield were like, why has Fabrice bought this crappy rundown old boozer? He's obviously lost his mind. He's been drinking too much tequila or something. Completely renovated it, very kind of like flop wallpaper. Back then it was cool, it was, stripped back the floor to oak floors, flop wallpaper, like oxblood leather booths. We had a fire in there. I made it into a really cool pub. I had someone design my own kind of crest with 2 lions and a chair, because Lion's Lair means chair. It was my nod back to London. It's all about chair and sitting down and eating and drinking and socializing. So it was probably a bit too out there, but made sense to me. So that was my first, my first business, which was, with about £8,500 and a bank loan, which when, you could still get those and you could still open venues on the cheap. So I was very lucky. And that was, 2003, 2004, maybe. I got into the Michelin Guide in 2005, which wasn't planned. So that was quite exciting. I think one of the first in South Yorkshire, one of the only gastropubs in South Yorkshire. A year later, I bought the Cricket, which was on the edge of Sheffield, in Dore, Totley, an old kind of farmhouse. Did a similar thing there. Beautiful old farmhouse. So I did the Cricket pub and dining room, so pub on one side and dining room on the other. That as well got in the Michelin Guide. So I got a surprise from the local radio when they came to see me at Lions Lair and said, "What's it like to be one of the only 2 gastropubs to be listed in the Michelin Guide?" I said, "Oh, that's really, I didn't know. I wasn't aware of it. I mean, I know more of the Michelin Guide, but, I don't run my business to be there. I run my business to make customers happy and bums on seats and etc." So which is the other one? I said, "Oh, it's the Cricket." Well, that one's mine as well. So it turned out I own the only 2 gastropubs in all of South Yorkshire that were in the Michelin Guide at 27 years old.
So obviously you had a knack for this, and everything was going as planned. You had your bar, you're in the Michelin Guide for a gastropub. What did you think could follow that?
Yeah, I mean, it was great, but anybody will tell you who's in hospitality, it's hard work. It's really hard work, and to get where you want to do, and if you have standards, you have to put the time in. And I think it was getting to a point where it was affecting my standards, and what I wanted to achieve were probably affecting how I was living. I was probably starting to make some of the wrong choices. I wanted to keep pushing, but you can't do that when you're working 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. So at 30, decided to sell them. And that was, then I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was very proud of what I'd done. But I realized that I can't keep on going this way because I'm 30 years old. If I keep on pushing this hard, I might not make it to 40. So it was time to take the foot off the gas a bit and take a break, because, doing it from 15 and then into London and it was just go. There was never really let off. There was no gap year. There was no traveling. There was no real, it's as anybody would tell you, I'm not expecting anyone to pull the violin out for me. It's the nature of hospitality. There's, millions of great people all around the world who are doing exactly the same thing. But it is hard work. And I was one of the lucky ones that managed to make a business out of it. But at 30, decided time to take the foot off the gas. And I was actually at a friend's, it was a friend's 30th birthday. I took some time off, and it was a friend of mine, John Gakuru, who was in London. He used to run Match Bar in Soho, the iconic bar. So he's originally from Kenya. So for his 30th, we went to Kenya. So there was a group of us, and if it was that time, we were on the beach, and John was like, "Oh, we're 30 now." I turned 30. This was in November. I turned 30 in June. And we're like, "Where are we going to be when we're 40?" And it was sitting on a beach and just stopping and going, I don't know where I'm going to be at 40. I can't be doing this because I'll be done. So I said to John at then, I said, "I'm going to do Christmas and New Year, and I'm going to try and sell." In February, I put the business on the market, and by May it was done. So that was it. Didn't know what I was going to do.
Were you really scared?
Yeah. It was daunting, but also quite enlightening at the same time. It had to happen. It needed to happen. I was getting to the point where I wasn't. It's a hard industry. It's the best industry in the world, but it's one of the hardest when you can't give it your all, because you're on show the whole time you're there. And if you can't, and if things are starting to get frustrating, there's nowhere to hide. And it's not fair if you can't give it your all. It's not fair on your customers. It's not fair on your employees. It's not fair on, it's not fair on yourself. So it was daunting, but it was definitely the right thing to do. It's definitely times I wasn't, I wasn't particularly happy at that point. So it was the right thing to do, but scary. And that's when I started. Yeah. So that was done in May. This was 2007, bearing in mind, just before the world. I mean, I know the world is going to be for tangle now, but 2007, and then we hit a pretty nasty recession in late 2007, 2008. So I managed to get out at just the right time, I think. I was very lucky to get out when I did.
So how long did you kind of faff around before deciding what the next step was?
I started working for my wine merchant because he said, "What are you going to do?" I was like, "I don't know." I moved to Leeds. That's what I did. When I was done in Sheffield, I moved to Leeds. And I started working for my wine merchant who was from Sheffield, who wanted to try and do more business in Leeds. I went, well, I'll have a go. Never sold wine before. And it turns out it's really, really hard. Really hard. Yeah, I mean, that was a couple of months of hard work. And I then caught up with John, who was working on Sagatiba at the time, and Nick Gillett, who he'd worked with on Sagatiba, was setting up Mangrove Brands, which is a distribution agency in the UK. He was setting up that with John Cook.
Of course.
And they were looking for someone for the North. And John said, you should speak to Fabrice. So I met Nick. We had a conversation, and they came down to London to meet. Met Matt actually, not John. And that was that. I was Mangrove. So we set up Mangrove in October 2007. So it kind of happened. It just seemed to flow. It was very fortunate.
Very. And Mangrove was one of the, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but one of the first really distributors of spirits outside the box.
Yeah, it was great. I didn't know I wanted to go into sales and certainly down into that brand development side. It wasn't part of the plan, but life takes you where it wants to take you, and you have to sometimes go with it and embrace opportunities when they arrive. And that's certainly what I did with this role. And I had such a good time working with Nick and John. 5 years I was there. And building that business, growing that business. I looked after everything from Birmingham to Inverness. So pretty much, everything outside of London was me. And we had a much smaller portfolio when we launched, but like you said, a really exciting portfolio. And I think it was an exciting time. I guess for me, it almost felt like it was mirroring what I'd done in the bars in the 90s. All of a sudden, I'm doing a similar thing with that innovation and being part of this new kind of exciting movement with the brand development and introducing new brands to the market, and still being involved in such an amazing industry and getting out to bars and talking to them. And yeah, it turned out that years in hospitality and obviously the commercial side of it, managing businesses and owning my own, with some success, not a lot of success, but I got through it. The commercial side of it turns out I'm quite good at selling. So, and I actually quite like it. So that was it. Yeah, 5 years with Mangrove. And we, like I said, really happy memories, really good brands, just such a good time.
You've kind of answered this, but I was going to ask if it gave you that same high that you got from running a bar or being in that moment, because I'm sure it's quite an addictive feeling, being at the right bar at the right time, working there, being super proud, and then going to work kind of corporate, using, inverted commas, and trying to get that same level of energy.
Yes. There is definitely this, it's the same but different. To be in that environment, we're still getting the same kind of enjoyment for sure. I guess the difference being from when you're one side, this was for me. I can only speak about for myself. When I was working in the bars and restaurants or owning the bars and restaurants, that feeling of giving someone a great night, memories with friends and family was, it was a fantastic feeling at the end of the night. That feeling of achievement was always great. With moving into Mangrove, and I think you're saying that corporate side, Nick and John were great because although we were ambitious with what we wanted to achieve with the business, they were very understanding and just kind of let me get on with it. So it didn't feel as though it was, they trusted me to get on and get the job done. And I believe I did, certainly did a good job for it. Yes, it was a different, step in fact, it was, more of a 9 to 5. First thing that was weird was having all this free time, not knowing what to do weekends, not knowing what to do evenings. Actually ended up working. I just ended up being out and working and socializing and networking and all of that kind of stuff, because it's what you do. It's how you get ahead in what I was doing. But yeah, the difference is, well, for me, the experience, as I said, the pleasure of someone having a great evening through food and drink, to being in a bar and watching the bartenders using your product and make the drinks for the customers who are having a great night. So there's still that enjoyment. And there was certainly the pleasure of going into a bar and seeing the brand. And I still get it now, obviously, with the business I have now, probably more so because it's my business and I have very, very good relations with our brands. But seeing the brands on the back bar, seeing the drinks on a menu, such a great feeling. It's great. And seeing how creative bartenders are and how they're using these products. It never ceases to amaze me. I love it. So still getting that same energy, as it was in Mangrove all the way through to now, in 15 years later.
Now, let's not that we're fast forwarding, but going to you working for yourself with Scotch+Limon and then Highball Brands, the drink straw. You were just ready to go out on your own again?
There was yes. So when I was at Mangrove, I was approached by a couple of different companies that wanted me to go and work for them. One of them I decided to go with was a company called Quintessentially, which is a luxury lifestyle concierge company. A little bit left field, but they were wanting to set up their own luxury spirits business called Quintessentially Spirits, where they would have a luxury vodka, luxury gin, luxury portfolio spirits, all called Quintessentially, which they would market through their vast database of high net worth and obviously their relationship they have with venues by sending their members to venues around the UK and then globally. So I went over to head that up as MD, and it was different for sure. It was not quite what I thought it was going to be. It was an experience. I was there 18 months and then decided it wasn't right. Personal development wise was great. All experiences are good experiences in my opinion. And I definitely took plenty from that to move into what happened next, which was deciding to go, actually, I want to go work for myself. After that experience, it's probably what pushed me into it. So it started with, as all good ideas start with, a pint in a pub. And it was with a dear friend of mine, Barry Wilson, who was at Diageo and had been at Diageo for, 10 years when we started having this discussion. Barry and I had known each other through the industry for quite a while. As you know, our industry is very close-knit. We'd known each other for a while and, we were just chatting, and he was obviously doing great things at Diageo, but I think he was starting to think about, what does he want to do? Does he want to progress through the big corporate machine? Does he want to try doing his own thing? I was looking at doing something different. So we kind of pooled our ideas and thought, well, why don't we have a go at doing it together? And that's where Scotch+Limon was born. That was in 2000 my memory's going now. I think it was 2013, 14. I don't know.
Yes, because I think that's when I knew about you for the first time.
Okay.
Because I remembered that Jamie Jones.
Yes,
who won the Diageo World Class for the UK. I remember all of a sudden he was working for you in some respect. And I was like, oh, that card. I know that card. Oh, that person. Yes, I think so. That must have been around 2016, 2017, something like that. I can't remember when he won. Yeah, I think it was 2017 or something.
Yeah, so we started in about 2014. Jamie joined us in about 2017, maybe 2018, because he went to work for Jason Atherton. He was working at Jason Atherton when he won. Of course he was, yeah. But yeah, I'd known. So Barry and I had known each other for a while. We decided to set up Scotch+Limon, which is, our kind of creative marketing agency where we help big brands, small brands. I guess the reason the conversation went the way it did is because Barry's come from a big corporate background. He understands big brands, big budgets, global marketing, how to communicate on that level. I understood how a bit more kind of smaller budgets, a bit more guerrilla, a bit more underground. How do you seed brands in a market in a different way and a bit more of a commercial side? So we believe that what we had collectively and what we could offer brands was much more exciting, because the smaller brands that are trying to think big and they want to start thinking big from day one, we can help them with both of that, with both of those elements. Bigger brands that are losing market share to smaller brands and not really understanding how they can get back into that. So we're helping them with how they do that, with their drink strategy and one thing or another. And we've had some great projects over the years. Obviously, we helped Ben develop and launch Seedlit, which was great fun. Obviously, Barry set up World Class when he was at Diageo. That was his baby that he set up back in the day, and still does some work on that. We have, we'd still work for Diageo, done some great work for Campari, for White Mackay and Dalmore. Some really fun stuff that we do there. Some smaller brands as well. Regal Rogue, we've had a lot of fun with over the years. Pink Pepper, we did a lot of work establishing them back in the day. So some, a real variation of brands, and it's a lot of fun. Out of doing some of that kind of sales advocacy, getting some of the brands recognized through mine and Barry's network within the industry, and trying to help brands get in front of the right bars and bartenders. they were started to ask for full distribution. And that was not why we set up Scotch+Limon. So we said, no, you say no again, you say no a third time, you think, hang on a minute, there's something in this. We know what we're doing. And the number of distributors had grown significantly from when we set up Mangrove back in 2007. We're talking 6-7 years later now. But, we were recommending some distributors to these brands. The ones that we would definitely recommend, the Mangroves and the likes were, and the casks and stuff, their portfolios are normally full. So you'd find yourself sometimes having to work with other distributors who are still doing the best they can. They're still doing a good job, but maybe they're working in a different way to we would generally work. So that's why we thought, we're going to do this. Let's do it ourselves. We know how to do it. We're, involved in Mangrove right from the beginning, from day one, before it was even had a name. And Highball was born 2017, I think it was. So Highball Brands was the next business, which is full importing and distribution company. And those brands in there are been going from strength to strength. Most of the ones that are with us now being with us from the beginning. Takamaka being one of them. I know you know Takamaka well. We were having some drinks on the roof only the other week. Fanny Fougère, Super Sour from Deluxe Distillery. We have Virtuous Vodka, organic rye from Sweden. We have Dangerous Don, of course, great mezcal from Oaxaca. Thea's behind that brand. Yeah, a really good kind of small, compact, but well-considered portfolio. We're fortunate with Highball, I guess, Susan, in the fact that Scotch+Limon was our bread and butter. We'd set up that business. It was doing well. It was keeping the lights on. It was paying the rent, paying the mortgage. So Highball, we could take our time with it to do it in the right way. It was a business to make money. You don't need a business to not make money, but we wanted to set up a distribution company that the brands work together as a family. Sometimes you can see in a portfolio, and you understand why, because business is business, but sometimes a portfolio is put together because you need to put brands in there because you need to make money. We were fortunate in the fact that we could take our time with it because we didn't necessarily need to make money in year 1, year 2, year 3. We were in this for the long game. So we didn't rush to bring in agave. We didn't rush to bring in whiskies. We didn't rush to, we were offered plenty, but did they fit what was already in there? I've been out selling. I didn't want our sales guys to go, oh, look at Takamaka. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. And then at the end of it, oh, by the way, do you want to try this? And almost feeling a little bit awkward about bringing it out. And, you tend to lose, someone is entitled, you tend to lose a bit of respect when you do that with some of your customers because they're like, come on, really? But at the end of the day, you're just doing your job. You've got to do your job. And you understand why people do it, but it's very hard. It's a very hard thing to do. And I wouldn't want to put that on any of my sales guys to have to do that. And we wanted to, we want to work with, the 4 key things about Highball is the liquid's got to be right. Would I drink it? Would Barry drink it? Would any of the guys who work for us drink it? It's a decision we'll make collectively. Does the bottle look good? Does it look good on the back bar? Does it look good on a retail shelf? The people behind the brand. We work with brand owners that we have a relationship with and we want to have a long-term partnership with. It's not a question of, we'll buy your booze, we'll sell it, or we'll send you a report in 12 months. We want to have that relationship with them because our industry from the top to bottom is about relationships, whether that's relationships within a bar team, within the kitchen, within the relationship between, the front of house and the back of house, relationships between the customers and the people working in the venue. It's all about relationships. It's all very well to have conversations when things are going great guns. But you want to have that relationship to be able to have those conversations when things aren't going great guns because you want to work with the brand owner in a partnership to make it great. You want to be able to find a solution to problems rather than kind of ignore them going, well, this isn't working. Well, you're rubbish. Oh, well, this is your fault. Your brand's, it's about having those conversations and doing it well. And certainly if you look at what's happened over the last 2 years, there's nothing can say more than, it's really important to have that, to be able to weather situations like that together.
Absolutely. You need to have that relationship. And who knew that this was coming like it did for the past 2 years? You worked together as a family to figure out the way for all of you to, succeed in the best way they can in this troubled times, really.
Yeah, that's exactly it. One of the hardest things through COVID was to see an industry that you've been raised in from a baby and everything you've seen and grown up around just suddenly disappear. And all of those people that you've worked with on a day-to-day basis in the businesses, whether they're, in their jobs. I mean, it was terrible, I mean, thank God we've come through the other side, but it was really tough for so many people. And one of the things we wanted to do was try and create a positive story when we set up the Drinks Drop, which was, a COVID business. And as you said there, it's about those relationships, very much so. We were sitting there and thinking, well, what do we do? We can't just sit here and go, well, we'll see what happens. That's just not the way we're made up. We want to find something to do. We want to find positivity. We want to find something to talk about. We want to try and do something about it. So when we set up the Drinks Drop, it was about how do we do something good for our, because it was originally it was part of Highball. We had a warehouse full of stock sitting there. What we're going to do? Well, it can sit there and it can wait, or we can try and do something. We can try and do something positive with it. We can try to do something positive for our brand partners, who are looking at saying, well, what do we do here? And also, more importantly, we're trying to do something positive for our industry. In the small way, in any way that we can. It's a small way. We're a small business, but at least we can do something. So that's why we set up the Drinks Drop. We went live on the 6th of April was our go live date. We closed our office on the 13th of March. Barry and I started to have conversations, and then with the wider team, having conversations about what we're going to do here. Barry had actually managed to get out to Australia. Luckily, his girlfriend was out there. He managed to get a last flight out, and he was in New York. So we were on different timings, but we were it was almost like we were almost working 24 hours a day. So we'd be chatting at some point, and then he'd probably do some stuff for the day while I'm, a bit behind, and vice versa. But we managed to get, within just over 3 weeks, we got 20 bars signed up. We created an e-commerce platform, a new website. We found a production space. We created a brand and went live with a full e-commerce platform in just over 3 weeks. And that's what we did with the Drinks Drop, which was, it's an incredible achievement.
Yeah, that is so incredible. That I didn't realize that it was so quick. It was so quick, especially, as you were saying, you wanted to do something. We had no idea what the future held. It could have been like this for more than just 2 years, you were super quick.
Yeah, we were. I think we were one of the first ones out of the blocks to do it at all, because I know there was a lot of venues, understandably, were trying to do it as well. We were even before some of the venues trying to jump on that, and we'd got a full business set up. I guess we had lucky because we had the team behind us to do it. We had the stock there to do it. We had a network of bars that we could tap into. There was only 20 bars that we could do. We did 10 in London, 10 in Manchester. We wish we'd have done more, but it would have been impossible to do that. But it was about how do you give these bars something to talk about as well, for them to be able to do something positive, for them to be able to have a feeling of worth. This is something to do. So yeah, it was set up very quickly. It was about giving money back to the bars. It was about employing out of work bartenders. There was one text that came through within a few weeks, actually. One of the guys who was helping us up in Manchester, even now thinking about it, it makes me feel quite emotional. He sent us a message because he was delivering for us on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. He sent us a message on a Monday, and he says, "You have no idea how much you're helping me out." He says, it's not about the money. He says, but knowing that I'm going to be working and doing something on Thursday gives me a reason to kind of carry on this week, because I know I've got something, I'll have something to do rather than just sitting in the house waiting. And even just those few hours a week made a huge difference to what I was doing. And it's, you forget that, these guys are going from one of the most sociable jobs in the world to literally sitting at home, not doing anything. I mean, the impact that had for so many people, and probably, the impact is probably ongoing for some people. It didn't disappear. But, I don't want to talk about doom and gloom, but it was challenging. But we were, our point was to try and do something positive. And the fact that we're doing something positive was, again, it feels like one of the best things we've ever done, without a doubt. Whether it worked as a long term is irrelevant. That's not why we set it up. It wasn't. We didn't, until we spun it out as a standalone thing, which wasn't until September last year. For those first 15 months, there was no money in it. There was no money at all. We were supporting it 100% through us. But what we managed to give back in guys that we're employing in London, the people we're employing for production and moving in Manchester, and over those 15 months, what we're giving back to the bars is revenue from the cocktails. We're talking 50, 60, 70,000 pounds, which we'd given. We were managing to generate that money to give back out. And for a small business, so for us, it's an incredible an amazing sense of achievement,
Were you surprised about how quickly the cocktail delivery took off in this country?
Yeah, it's a weird one. Yes and no. I mean, surprised, but kind of just, it made sense. The convenience sector has been in massive growth for a long time. We've seen it in massive growth for a long time. The convenience sector in the UK is worth over 40, 50 billion. It's worth a lot of money. Uber Eats, Deliveroo, goes on and on and on. It had never translated into drinks in the same way, in that kind of pre-made, ready-to-drink cocktails at home. There was some kits where you can buy, the bits and bobs, and you make your cocktails at home, and they're brilliant. But I guess there was some reservations or some maybe lacking confidence of the drinks you can get pre-made delivered to your door. One of the things that COVID certainly did was, through necessity, people go, well, we'll just try it. And by trying it, they go, actually, this is really good. And certainly from our side, we chose some of the best bars in the UK to partner with. They gave us the recipe. We've replicated that as best we can. And we send that out to people's houses. This is, we're talking some of the top 50 bars in the world, and you're getting a cocktail from these guys delivered to your door for £7.50 a drink. It's, it's amazing.
Yes, it does seem like a no-brainer, but at least for me, and again, I can only speak for me, the fun of having a cocktail is the whole going out to a bar, watching someone make it, who is much better than I at making something at home. And it's the whole package. It's the whole package. And I think people really just wanted a teeny bit of that. I know I did. That's why I did. I wanted to support my friends in the bar industry as well. And that's why I bought them. But the common punter who doesn't know anyone really just wants that experience. And if that little, bag of cocktails is going to make it, that made our COVID experience so much better. And you did feel part of something.
Yeah. I mean, you've absolutely nailed it. Yeah, it was very much, it almost gives people that almost a sense of, don't say normality, but feeling as though they're still getting that kind of, going out for cocktails it's a real treat. It's exciting. It's great. It's socializing, and this, hopefully cocktails at home can continue. It will never take away from the experience of being in a bar, nor should it. You should never have that. But I think people are realizing it certainly has its place. Without a doubt, it's got its place. I mean, I love going into bars, but I have half a dozen drinks drop cocktails in my freezer at all times, because sometimes you just want a cocktail. And I make cocktails. I can make great cocktails. I mean, my wife is, at first she was like, why would we need them? I mean, if we want a martini, we'll make a martini. Well, you'll just make one for us. And then when she tried it, she was like, actually, this is amazing. This is just so easy. You just take it out of the freezer, leave it for, 10 minutes to get to, liquid, and pour it, and you're done. It's just like, this is great. And it's a very different, it's a really enjoyable experience. Nothing like being in a bar, and like we both agreed, it's should never take away from that experience, and never will. But to be able to enjoy a great cocktail with friends at home, certainly now coming into summer, barbecues, but throwing half a dozen pouches into your esky and going for a picnic. I mean, why not?
It's the best. I know that I'm not the best bartender. I didn't train. I can certainly make a gin and tonic pretty easily, but it's so much nicer. And also for my guests to say, this came from 9 Lives. This came from somewhere else. This came from Swift. This came from wherever. And they made it. And this is why it's so good. And it also introduces them to that bar if they haven't been there before. And then they're going to want to go to that bar, at least now that we can. I think it's also a way to give back. It's not just showing, oh, here's a brand of alcohol and I can make my own drink, but here are the people, and get to know the people behind what you're drinking through this one little patch of liquid. And it's its own story. So yeah, definitely. I'm so glad it has the place and will continue to have the place in our fridges.
I mean, one of the nice things about lockdown was they felt they could go on almost like on a little bar crawl, because they could pick the bars that they've maybe never been to, but always wanted to go, and almost feel like they're experiencing, they could be in East London, they're fancy going to a drink in the Trailer Happiness on a Friday night. Oh, let's get a couple of Trailer Daiquiris and feel like we've gone to Trailer Happiness. But also, as it kind of carried on and the trade's open again, we do order before 2:00 and you're getting next day delivery. So for someone in Aberdeen, they can be drinking cocktails from London, the next day. It's great, and for the bars as well, it's exciting for them, because it means they're reaching a national audience all of a sudden. They're tapping into that national audience that may not have been able to get to before. So I think there's with what we do, we feel there's a place for it. There's a few other great at-home cocktail services that are out there as well. I think there's certainly space for more than us, and I think it will continue. It's the same way, I guess. Making drinks at home is great. And I think we're now starting to shift in that when you order a takeaway, you want to order your food to come to you and it's done, right? And you want to enjoy it. If we can it's always getting to that same experience now. It's like, well, I want some nice drinks tonight. Well, if I know I'm going to get really good drinks, I'll just get them ordered to my house. There's going to be no waste. I've got no faffing. I've no cleaning to do. I'm not going to worry about this and that. They're just going to come to the house. I mean, we do a 3-liter bagging box, watermelon margaritas. I mean, if that's not going to get your barbecue going,
All right. The big question now. So are you settled, or are you thinking about what's next?
Pretty settled. I mean, we've just launched Highball in Australia.
Congratulations.
So that's the next project, which is going off rather well. We started in lockdown, unfortunately, but we needed to keep the wheels turning. So we kind of went ahead and carried on with launching out there. Obviously, the brand partners have been understanding and been patient as we weather the storm of COVID over there. It's been a little bit different with how they've opened and closed. But yeah, so that's the next project. I'm finally going to get out to meet the team, the Highball sales team, in September, which I can't wait. So that's the next thing. I think I'm settled. I'm really loving what I'm doing. I'm really, I'm just very, very... I'm very fortunate to have ended up where I am. I do genuinely mean that. Our industry's, it's the best industry for me to have landed in. Even though my parents didn't want me to go into it, I think they could see it was probably where I was going to end up. And to have managed to continue into it when I was having that bit of a low point, being in full hospitality and owner operator, but managed to come through and be where I am now. It's amazing. It's brilliant.
I agree. I think it's totally amazing too. And congratulations for all your successes.
Okay.
But before you go, I always ask 2 questions. Can you, since you've been a bartender and you certainly know drinks, and the answer cannot be buy one of ours, do you have any top tips for the home bartender?
For the home bartender, I mean, ice is always a thing, right? You have to have ice. A lot of the time, you don't have the right ice, or you go to the corner shop and it's not great. What I always have in the freezer is, if you do have a takeaway, I take those takeaway tubs and I fill them with water and I just pop them in the freezer. And I always have 2 or 3 takeaway tubs of ice, so like a little block ice in the freezer at all times, just so as I know that I can just get a small knife, chip away, and I can have some nice chunks of decent ice at some point. If I want to have it with a cocktail, if I want to have it with a whiskey, I can always know. I know you can get the silicone molds, but I just find having a stack of these 3 things in the freezer has always been a bit of a godsend for me. And it means you don't need to buy anything. You've got, it's easy.
I love that. No one's ever said that. I like that one. I think I'm going to do that. I have some in the back there. Now, last but not least, if you could be anywhere drinking anything, where would that be? And what would you be drinking?
This is a tough one because I'm currently in the south of France. So it's actually quite nice. But then when I am here, I'm just being in London. So, there's this, I'm looking forward to getting back to London I'll be driving back Saturday, Sunday. But removing the 2 places where I live, I mean, it has to be, there's one place which I can never get back to quick enough, and it's the Seychelles. And it's drinking a rum on the beach in the Seychelles with obviously a good friend of mine who has the distillery out there, Takamaka. But there's something about sitting on the beach and drinking a rum and just watching, everything just disappears. It really feels it's a really special moment. The first time is great, but every time I've done it since, I've been lucky enough to get out there a couple of times, but it doesn't, the shine doesn't wear off. It feels magical each time. There's something just great about it. So yeah, I know it's not a venue, but there's that beach and that distillery has got an incredible calling.
Oh, I just want to jump on a plane right now and go there. It sounds divine. And no, it didn't have to be a venue. So that's perfect. Well, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with me, telling me your life story. It was so great. It's been a delight to meet you and know you. And I'm so glad that people are still buying Drinks Drops cocktails.
Thanks for having me. It's been really nice talking to you. Sorry, I hope I've not gone on too much, From a shy kid, I've certainly found my voice.
There's no such thing. You can go on forever. Doesn't matter. But it was great to have you on the show. So I will see you around London and enjoy France.
Yes, thank you. I'll see you soon.
Thanks so much to Fabrice for being on the program. I am thrilled that he was my last guest of season 6. If you're in the UK, check out the Drinks Drop at thedrinksdrop.com. We are so lucky. Fabrice shared one of the Drinks Drop recipes with us, and it's our cocktail of the week. If you live in the UK, you can get this amazing Apricot Sazerac from Manchester's fabulous bar, The Daisy, via the Drinks Drop. Anywhere else in the world, you're lucky that they shared the recipe with us. So, add all of these ingredients to a mixing glass. 26 ml of Fanny Fougera Petite Sirgou Cognac, 26 ml of rye whiskey, 12 ml of apricot liqueur, 3.5 ml of Demerara sugar syrup, 4 dashes of jade absinthe, and 1 dash of Angostura bitters. Add ice and then stir, stir, stir. Then strain it into a rocks glass with ice. You'll find this recipe, more stirred cocktail recipes, and all the cocktails of the week at lushLifeManual.com, where you'll find most of the ingredients in our shop. I'm heading out on my first real holiday in 3 years, so I'm bringing season 6 of Lush Life to a close. Next week, I will be on the beach. So if you live for Lush Life, make sure you head out to the bars and restaurants you love and tell them how much you love them. Theme music for Lush Life is by Steven Shapiro and used with permission. And Lush Life is always and will be forever produced by Evo Terra and Simpler Media Productions. Which leaves me to say the wise words of Oscar Wilde: all things in moderation, including moderation, and always drink responsibly. We'll pick this up again in September, when I have a surprise for you. Until that time, bottoms up.